Welcome to another episode of This Isn't About Me. And I am so grateful today to be joined by my beautiful friend, Stacey Friedman, my Empath epiphany teacher. So we can certainly talk about that. But thank you for being here, Stacey. And as I do on every episode, I'll just let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we can just dive in and see where the conversation goes.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. This is so awesome. I'm so excited to be here with you. I know we always we start talking and it's like, hours go by and want to keep talking with you. So I'm excited for us to do this. So who am I? Yeah, I am let's see what wants to come out today. I'm a wife, happy wife. I'm a mom. I'm a student of life. I'm a seeker. I am a fierce supporter of women and living a healthy, lifestyle. I'm an animal lover. I'm a Capricorn. I'm a moon sign Aries and a rising sign Libra. I think I'm an Enneagram 2. Is that the helper? Whichever's the helper one. And then I guess more professionally speaking, I would identify as a women's health and empowerment coach, a healer, and an educator. So I guess those are my three more formal, officially professional titles. But I am all women, and I am all me, and I am divine love.
I love that. And highly empathic.
And an empath and a highly sensitive person all the way. Yes, through and through.
The biggest one of all, I think, personally knowing you. Not that all the other things are not also true and big, but that's what I think of when I think of you.
Yeah, I'm a deeply feeling person for sure, who takes in a lot of information about a lot around me, whether that's the physical environment, the emotions of the people around me, the energies in the air. I'm a deeply feeling and thinking person. Yeah, it's interesting because I guess 2 or 3 years ago, that would be the first thing that would spill out of my mouth. Like, I'm an empath and a highly sensitive person. And it's interesting to me how over these few years of really becoming more and more comfortable and rooted in my high sensitivity, that it's just like a part of me now, where I feel like probably 3 years ago I was in that obnoxious stage of telling everyone, I'm an HSP, I'm an empath, I'm an HSP, I'm an empath. And now it's just, it's very much just, it's an integrated part of my identity that I feel really comfortable with. So it's just kind of interesting myself to not hear that come out of my mouth first, and you had to remind me to even say it. So wow, how interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because you owning that piece of you and being that person is what so fundamentally and profoundly changed my life. So it's very interesting that didn't even come up, because also for people that don't know you, this is such a beautiful piece of who you are. And such a powerful piece of who you are. And also, having seen your numerology chart, of course, I know this is also built into how you were born and were made to be on this planet in this time. So for me, it still feels profound for that to be such a part of who you are. But it is funny that you didn't even identify it. That's so funny.
Yeah, it's wild. And it's kind of like, I was thinking of this when I was refilling my tea. Because in those little moments between the talking is when these little ideas come through. It's like one of the most delicious gifts that I've received over the last 5 years, when I would consider my spiritual awakening having begun, which was late 2017. I've been on this gorgeous journey of allowing myself as a woman to cycle through different phases and stages and seasons of who am I in this stage of my life, right? Like, who am I in 2023, because I find I'm so many people, I'm so many identities, I see myself as so many, hats or roles or titles. And I've found like it's really fun and part of the adventure of moving through time and just opening myself to like, well, who am I going to be this year? Who as a woman will I be this year? Will I be more of a mother? Will I be more of a wife this year? Will I be more of a coach this year? Like, how will universe have me use more of my energy and time to be a part of this great tapestry, right? Like, I feel like as women, the fun of being in midlife, I'm 47, and like the fucking joy of, sorry if I'm not allowed to
It's
curse,
okay.
the joy of being in my 40s is that like I get to choose what hat I want to wear on any given day. Like, I don't have to just be this mom. I don't have to just be an empath coach. I don't just have to be a healer. I can be all of that or none of that. And it's like part of this great adventure of giving myself permission to not have to label or identify anymore. We were talking earlier before the podcast about like
Hmm.
riding that wave. Like, I'm really enjoying the spaciousness, which is a new core value for me, like spaciousness, of
Mm-hmm.
riding the wave of identity through the spaciousness of permission. Like, I don't have to be all one thing or any one thing to any one person. And it's interesting because I bet if you asked 20 random people in the world that know me, what do you like, who is Stacey? You'd probably get 20 different answers. And I've always been a bit of a chameleon. That's always been me. I don't
I
know. It's
love that.
just the way I was meant to show up here, that I, based on what I'm doing in my life at that time, in that season, that's who I become until that phase sort of, gracefully lets me out and I enter a new phase and identity. And I don't know. I don't know if that's making any sense, but it's pretty interesting to reflect on.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It makes total sense to me because I know you pretty well at this point. For sure. I love that. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about how actually this last week in particular for me, I've really been kind of exploring, thinking about, leaning into, I don't know exactly what the word is, but kind of putting more thought into like all the pieces of who I am and who I've been, and sort of integrating like who I was or who I've been with all the things I've been through and who I am now, and what does that mixture look like this year or right now. And like, even I'm in Stacey's book club, which she runs 4 times a year. I'm in the book club right now. We're doing Cassandra Speaks, but even the other day, having the memory come up in my Facebook memories that I was in the vagina monologues when I was a senior in college, and was something I was a little uncomfortable with, but I did it. And I was like on that stage and I did the practice and all that stuff. And it's a piece of me I kind of forgot, but it is a piece of who I am and who I've always been. And so I'm sort of in this funny place of like pulling all those things together and really kind of figuring out like who I am based on all the versions of me that I've been and who I am now in this moment, if that makes sense. So
Mm,
I
makes
feel you
so
too.
much sense. And I think there is a bit of like trying to, like, as I'm asking this question, like, where does it come from? This pressure to like know who are you? Like when we meet someone for the first time, right? Like, hi,
Yeah.
nice to meet you. Like, what do you do? Like, where are you from? What do you do? Like, who are you? We want to know who each other is. We want to know, because right then we can like put each other into our little safe box over here, or like, oh, dangerous person box over there, and then we can know how to navigate, right?
Yes.
And I don't know, I just feel like maybe since like the whole COVID thing, it's just created so much more of an opportunity, I feel, for everyone to revisit and reassess, like, what do I really care about? What really is important to me? What are my values? What do I believe in? And I feel like we are all coming out now in this 2023 with like, we're all kind of PTSD still, trying to
Mm-hmm.
find the new normal, but everything feels kind of different, even though it's like we're going back to what's normal. It also feels kind of different because everyone's gone through some like massive rebirth through the pandemic. And now it becomes like, can we all go back out into the world and like not be so hung up necessarily on who we are, but just trust that we're exactly where we're meant to be right now? Because I feel like there's some kind of weird hidden pressure on us to like, based on our age, based on, right, like perhaps our education that we got or didn't get, based on external factors, like we're supposed to be this certain identity at this time in life, based on all these random things out there that like really are totally haphazard and really have nothing to do with why we're really here. Um, so I like that you're reflecting back on other versions of you, all the versions of Leanne that you've been in this lifetime. And how fun is it to look back and be like, remember that phase when I was like someone who wore hats? And remember that phase where I was someone who was like really into like animal rights? And remember when I was in that phase where right, like all these different seasons of our
Mm-hmm.
life as women. I think it's so freaking cool. I think it's fascinating to have that perspective that like we don't have to be one thing. We get to be whatever we want to be. There's just, I feel like that question starts to like come out maybe in middle school, right? Like people start, what do you want to do when you're, in high school? What are you going to want to do when you go to college? Who are you going to be?
Yeah.
Right? Like those conversations start pretty early on where we sort of lose, I think, that childlike innocence of like just wandering, like, and just allowing ourselves to, be taken by a moment and be interested in this day or interested in that day. Over our like lifetimes, we have more responsibilities, and our time to play and explore grows thinner and thinner if we don't stay conscious of it. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, prior to my awakening, whatever we want to call it, I was on a track. I knew who I was. I was a teacher. I was a wife. I was a mother. That was my track.
Yes.
And then Goddess was like, yeah, no, there's another track for you. And it was like, what? I'm not these things anymore, or there's other
Yeah.
things I can be.
Yeah. And yeah, and it's interesting because I'm not in it. I mean, this has been like I guess probably 7-year epiphany for me, right? But like it's just ongoing. But looking at it now, I'm like meshing all those things together and also remembering like that who I was is still who I am as well, which is interesting too. So that even though like you got taken off that path, you're still that thing, like that those things still live in there. And that was a career trajectory for you or career path for you, but like the person that you were and like the gooey like inside bits were probably still there then. At
Yeah.
least that's a little
Yeah.
bit of what I'm kind of like, it's grown, right? It's funny
Yeah.
because I was just having this conversation last night with a friend, and she's like, you've always been this supporter. Like I even remember you younger, like always like trying to make people feel better about themselves or
Yeah.
complimenting and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like that's a piece that's like never gone away, even though all these other things have changed in my life. Like
Well, that's your core essence.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your core essence. And I think you're right. Like our core essence always stays the same. It's that part of us that when we look back, even though we've gone through the different phases and the different fashion styles and the different interests along the way, that we were always, for you, you were always that cheerleader of other people. You were always this supporter. Yeah. And I think that core essence is something that makes us all very unique and special. And everyone has their own sort of core essence, what makes them at the heart, like the essential self inside of all the identities. This is the part that's, like you said, called like the gooey stuff. And for me, it's like, you know, wanting to help and love and share, you know, comfort with other people and support other people. That's my core essence, like underneath whatever identity I have, like what I feel my core essence is to offer love, just to love and support people and to help people who are struggling. So yeah, I agree that definitely is like the core essence that we are. And yeah, all the other stuff's just fun shit to play with. Like,
I know.
who do
It's
I
just
want to be this
like
year?
all
Right?
the
Who do I
things
want
that
to be
just
today?
make us the complex, crazy humans that we are.
And we are multi-dimensional beings,
We are,
very
yeah.
much so. We're not just this identity. We're not just a mom. We're not just a partner. We're not just a sister. We're not just a teacher. We are so much more,
So many things
so much
all at
more.
once.
Yeah. And I think that's been the gift, like I said, of like midlife, like being in my 40s. It's been this really fun exploration of like, at the gooey core, yes, I'm someone who wants to be there for my children, be there for my partner, be there for my clients, but I don't have to, I feel like I don't have to be like, when I first started my business, I was a nutrition coach. Like that was my identity. I help people find right for me foods that make them feel the best version of themselves. And then that morphed, and I was a trauma practitioner, trauma resolution practitioner. I was a healer. That became my title, right? That was like what I identified as. Then I learned about high sensitivity, and then I was like, I'm an empath educator. And in between there, I was a goddess trainer too, because I learned about the divine feminine, and that turned me on. And that was part of my transformation, is really understanding my own divine femininity, what that means, and how to be a woman in this world that is so fucking hard to be a woman in this world.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
you're
Just
not,
talking
if you
about
don't,
that last night too. Oh, yeah.
yeah, but like the identities of how I'm showing up in my core
Hmm.
essence, I'm enjoying the play. And like business coaches would have my throat for this, because when you think of, from a business perspective, any entrepreneurs who might be listening, it's like you are your brand, and you are the like, you need to be known for that thing. And I
Right.
say, like, fuck that. Like, I call bullshit on that. Like, I can change that as many times as I want to, because I trust that I will continue to be used by the divine in service in all the ways that I'm meant to. And as my path changes and moves and evolves, so will the work that I put out there. And so my role, my title, how I identify who I am, yeah, that's going to change along the way too. So,
Yeah.
um, I'm having fun. I'm like really grateful for this conversation, because I'm like, God, I'm actually having a lot of fun with this. And um, yeah, I think the 40s is a really magical decade for women. I got a reach out from someone not too long ago, and she's in her 40s and said she's like having that existential crisis. And I said to her, but what if it were a midlife awakening for you, and not the typical existential crisis? Like, it's such a difference in how we word it, right? Like, to think that
Words
it's a
matter.
crisis.
Hmm.
It's not a crisis. I'm feeling the invitation now to rediscover who I am, what turns me on, what lights me up, what excites me, what's on my heart, and how I'm meant to show up here. So I don't know. If you're not in your 40s yet, anyone out there, like, just wait. It's such a gorgeous decade. Like, I'm so happy where I am in the 40s. And I know, like, a lot of maybe for a lot of women, like approaching 40, like, I don't know how most women feel about it, but it could feel a little scary, or like you're really like getting on in your ears and more midlife, and that could be a little scary. But I have found it to be the most gorgeous 7 years of really knowing myself and giving myself permission for that to be like whoever that might be for the day. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I remember reading a post, I think, on Facebook back when my babies were younger. And it was all about, it was written by, obviously by a woman, all about how like really your 40s is actually like the best time, because I think the story was she was like sitting at a pool, and she was like at like the community pool or whatever, and she's like watching like the little 20 somethings and scurrying around in their bikinis and the kids and all that. And then like the women in their 30s that are just like so like tired and run down and like ragged from parenting, because that's tiring, especially at a pool with young children. Is
Yes.
exhausting and is a lot of work. And so she was sitting there watching like these different ages of women and in her 40s, and being like, in your 40s, you get to finally like read a book at the pool and sit and like enjoy the pool again.
Yeah.
And you get to like go to the gym again and like get your body back, and like sort of similar to what you're saying, like take control of your life now, because most of the time, a lot of the time, your kids are older enough, right? And they're self-sufficient, they can swim on their own, they don't need you there the whole time. Like,
Depends
and
on the kids you have, but yes.
depends on the kids and the age at which you have your children, of course. But generally speaking, in
Generally, yes.
the general, I had my kids at 26 and 29, so this will be my life. But just like it's just like a time you like, you finally sort of get to relax and like,
Yes.
and you're also at a point where you're like, I just like don't really give a shit like what society says about who I am, who I should be. Like, I'm gonna just finally just like not give a crap anymore and say what I want to say and be who I want to be and sit at the pool and read a book and not have to worry about my kids. And
Yeah.
I remember reading that when I had like very young kids. Like, my kids are still pretty young, but they were really like, they were babies at that time. And just feeling like so much hope, I think.
Yeah,
All
that one
right.
day
I mean, it's
time would come. Yeah,
yeah. And
there would
especially,
definitely
I have
be.
2 boys, so they're like crawling all over the place and like crazy energetic. And I'm like, the thing that gets me through the days a lot of times is knowing that one day they're going to be teenagers and I'm going to have to yell at them to get their butts off the couch and do something. And I'm like, that gets me through a lot of life.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm 37, so I'm not there yet. But I
I don't think
feel
I
so.
was there 10 years ago either. I really don't
Yeah,
think I was there either. Telling you,
yeah,
there is something gorgeously magical. It's so funny because I'm like, who, where's my business evolution? How's it going to mirror my personal evolution? That's actually, I thought of this in the shower like a few days ago, like becoming more of that midwife to women entering midlife. Like, I think that's going to be the new iteration of like my who I am. When people are like, "Oh, what do you do?" and "Who are you?" Oh, I'm like a midwife for women in their midlife who are figuring out who they are again.
I love
So
that.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things tying back to what we were talking about earlier, this being an empath, my personal healing journey over the last 5 years, discovering I was an empath, discovering what comes along with that, understanding how I have these porous boundaries and realizing that I am different than a lot of people, and that, I can feel so deeply what other people are feeling. It really helped me to see how much I had been, without knowing it, taking on so much of the people that I loved who were around me and not really understanding who I ever was throughout that whole journey because I was so bombarded by other people's feelings and emotions and well-being that I kind of didn't have that opportunity to really get to know who Stacey was. She was always just loving and bright. I was always the loving and bright little girl, but that's also been part of this double gift of like the 40s and understanding all there was for me to heal as being someone who was like, gosh, I'm an empath. Okay, so like I could clear out my energy body. I could clear out all this emotion that's not mine, that's in my cells, that really belonged to my mom, that belonged to my best friend, belonged to my partner at the time, whoever that was. Holy shit, what a freeing liberation that was to know that I was carrying so much stuff, not just beliefs about who I was, which most of us have to untangle and unravel and deconstruct as we get older, but that on an energetic and emotional level too, I was really holding on to so much that was clouding me from being that open channel to be able to like really let divine come in and start, communing with me because I was just holding on to so much stuff. So what a gift to do that kind of healing because it's part of what has offered me the permission. Like when you were talking about being that mom, who can finally look forward to like getting to that place where you don't give a shit what other people think about you. It can come to you sooner. It could even come to you sooner than that time because I think, we come here, we're open vessels when we're born. We have no programming other than what's genetically, and yes, we have the DNA component and probably 7 generations worth of trauma that we take with us, but we are mostly clear, and the programming hasn't quite been consciously, installed into our minds yet. And then time goes on and we start getting all the programs, right? All the projections, all the fears, all the worries of the people around us, all the you should do this, you shouldn't sit this way, you should wear this, act like this, blah, blah, blah. And then we get filled up with all this shit, all this junk for years and years. We carry it and we get to this beautiful stage. And then it's like, okay, now we get to unload all that. So it's just such this cool, beautiful way of like the way that life works, like coming here so open and clean and then slowly getting filled up with all the junk, having to sort through it at some point and then letting it all go and then revising all the programs, revising all the stories, all the identities, and having choice then when that time comes for each of us. Hopefully in this lifetime it will come for everybody, but not everyone I think is meant to go through that in maybe this lifetime, but they will at some point, I believe. That's my personal belief. But yeah, you could even unload that stuff sooner and just give yourself permission to examine what are the parts of you that are holding on to the ways that you need to show up in the world. Where are the shoulds coming from? Because it's never your voice. It's really never you. It's other people, it's other influences. And so for people listening, if they're in that boat of like still living their life by the like confusion and who should I be? And maybe wanting to go this path, but then the voices are like, no, you can't do that. You're an imposter. You're not good enough for that. Or you should be doing X, Y, Z. Really coming face to face with like, who is that? What voice is that? Whose voice is that you care so much what other people are thinking? And that's where the healing really starts, is when you can identify like, oh my God, that's not even a part of me. That's not part
Mm-hmm.
of my essential core self, right? And then you start to get into oh, that's this person's voice. Oh, right.
Yeah.
And understanding where that comes from, having compassion for that, being able to forgive it, and then rewriting the story for yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
we can do it anytime. And I'm working with women who are getting younger and younger, which I find fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, I think this is happening for women younger and younger these days. It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
Or they're having this like midlife thing happening in their late 20s now and like early 30s. And I'm like, whoa, the age of the awakening is it seems like it's coming down the age.
Yeah.
Maybe just my experience, but it's pretty cool.
No, I think that's real. I was gonna say which you did add in there, you capped it off beautifully, that like once you kind of can get through some of that stuff and you can identify the voices and you can release some of those things that are just clogging you up, there is such a you then get to rewrite those stories and you get to like decide at that point where you want to go. And I think that's like full circle is also then deciding who you are and what makes you happy and what you like to do and which pieces again of like the old you want to bring forward and who you are and all those things. Once you can kind of clean those cobwebs out is the way I always like think in pictures, but like
Yeah.
once you can kind of clean those that cobwebs out, clean out that space, it's so there's so much more space to like bring in new information and change and update and decide. That's a big thing too. I think like you get to decide then and make some
Yeah.
decisions and It's
One
fun.
thing you said is really interesting, that we get to like, who am I? What do I want? Like, where do I see myself moving now that I have more of like this clean slate? And one thing I just want to say is that for a lot of women, especially the women that I work with, they really don't know yet who they are. They
Mm-hmm.
know their core essence, but they really don't know much more than that, because coming back to the empath, and I work with a lot of, I'm that is who I serve. I work with highly sensitive people and empaths, and for so many of us, it was a missing experience to connect into what brought us pleasure, what lit us up, what made us feel on purpose. And so it can feel really overwhelming and scary to get to that place where like you're clearing out the cobwebs.
Mm-hmm.
You've done your forgiveness. You see things for what they really are, that this was only other people's projections and traumas that they were dumping on me, right? You get to that place, and then there's this clean slate, and that can feel really scary because it's never been something that maybe a person's been allowed to explore or been given the tools to know how to explore. So that's kind of the fun, I think, if you can think of it as fun. And like one of the things we always talk about is turtle steps. Like, we don't have to know right away who we want to be, what we want to do, that it might reveal itself slowly to us. And I think, again, like spaciousness, here's my word, creating the space to go slow and to like, okay, well, what's one thing that actually brings me joy and pleasure today? What's one thing that turns me on today, or in this hour, or in this moment? Because for a lot of people, it's really an unknown. They really truly don't know. So what I
Mm-hmm.
did was just follow the breadcrumbs and go one baby step at a time. Like, oh, this is feeling right now in my full bodiness. This is feeling like, oh, this is really what I want to do. Teach people about how food affects them. Oh my God, because that was such a big epiphany for me, how what I was putting in my body was affecting me and clouding me and clogging me up. So that felt like ripe and true. So I followed that. And then when I followed that, it led me eventually to the next thing that would be part of my, what makes me feel on purpose, what makes me feel like this is Stacey in her core essence showing up fully. And it's just a question of, do you have the courage to follow just the next breadcrumb,
Mm-hmm.
just the next one thing, without having to think about 5 years from now and 10, we were talking about this, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It's okay to give that a little bit of consideration, but I think that's what psychs people out a lot and prevents them from following the breadcrumb, because they can't see how point A is going to lead to point Z. We're not supposed to know that. That's the
Right.
thing.
We're
We're not
along for the
supposed to
ride.
see it
Riding the
all.
waves, Stace.
Exactly. We're not supposed to see it. And
Right.
even if we did see it, it would make no sense to us right now, because we're not meant to know the next steps right now. That's how I believe we were designed to be here.
Yeah.
It's an unfolding, and
Yeah.
it's a continuous process of staying in alignment with yourself, saying yes to what feels like an actual yes, saying no to what feels like an actual no, and then taking that step. And that's, to me, the fun of, especially in the 40s, like, who am I now? What like, I did all the things I was supposed to do. I went to college, I got the jobs, I got the house, I got the partner, I had the kids, I got, right? Like all the
Yes.
checklist
All the
things. And then
things.
you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, is that all there is to all this? Like, we get to, have the fun of, oh, there could be more. I can be more than I thought I was supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. And also, um, what was I thinking while you were saying that? Like, gathering was the word that came to mind, like gathering that information and just like letting that be another piece of the puzzle, and just like keep sort of gathering the pieces as you go, and like consciously sort of being aware of those things. And for me, this year was like, going into this year was, I've talked about this on multiple episodes, so sorry to all the people that I'm going to repeat this to again, but was like, joy does not resonate with me, but one day I found what feels good, and that really resonated with me. So along the
Yeah.
same lines. And so this
Yeah.
year for me is dedicated to doing anything and everything that feels good to me. And if it feels good, then I am a go for it.
Yeah.
And I really sat down with myself and thought through like all five of the senses and experiences to say like what feels good, what feels good to my ears. This isn't just like physical pleasure and what feels good, right? Because obviously that's a thing, and I think it's easy to think what physically feels good, i.e.
Mhm.
sex and things,
And
but
chocolate
and
and
chocolate.
sand beneath your toes. Yeah.
but but yes, like even that, right? Like physically the sand feels good, the buds on the trees feel good to my eyes, like what feels good to my smell, what feels good to eat, what feels good to hear. Like I really went through all of that because my initial thought in what feels good was like the physical sort of body pleasure type thing. But then I
Yeah.
sort of pushed myself to think outside of just that one thing and really consider all the things in life that feel good. Looking at the clouds is like one of my most favorite things
Mm.
ever. The sky is forever like my muse, and my poor children are so like, they're like, can we not stop and take a picture at the corner today? And I'm like, no, we're going to stop. And we're definitely going to stop now that you asked me not to. But
I love
it's just, and then like just, and gathering that evidence too, right? And like, and you like keeping it wherever you keep it, whether it's mentally or even writing it down, like this was something that felt good to me today, or
it.
brings me joy, or makes
Yes.
me happy, or makes my heart happy, or whatever it is. And then just like doing more of that, calling more of that in. And to your point, like then continuing to go on the path to just keep gathering that evidence and gathering all those things.
Yeah.
And that's what makes up who we are.
Well, I think we're done here. We can hang up now. This was amazing. We just figured it all out.
We just
I
solved
love
all the
it.
world's problems. That's it. That's all there is to it. Just clear out the cobwebs in your
But it
brain,
really is,
get
Leanne,
rid of
it
the
really
stories,
is.
rewrite the stories,
It
and
really
gather the
is the
evidence.
formula. It is the
It is.
formula for finding whatever you want to call it, like your purpose, your I hate that word so much too, but
Yeah,
like
me too.
your what you're here to do, what you're here to enjoy, what you're here to experience, what you're here to explore. Like agree. It's we have to get to that place where we're willing to look in that mirror and go, you know what? I see myself, but this is not who I feel happy being. Like I'm wearing a lot of masks. This is not really me. Like who I'm looking at right now. Like, yeah, you're me, but you're like there's a lot of shit on top of who I really am here.
Yeah.
What's all that stuff and how do I get rid of it? Right.
Yeah. Have you noticed too? I've noticed in the last bit, especially as I've really sort of dug more into this work, I noticed that I look different.
Mm.
Have you noticed that in yourself throughout your journey? Like, or if you look back at pictures pre, 7 years ago, not just that, you're 7 years younger, but just like I
Like
look at myself
physically,
in
do you mean?
pictures and sometimes I'm just like, I look like a different version of me. Like I see a different version
Ah,
of me
wow.
than I was seeing. Like there was one photo I saw myself and I was like, wow, like that does not, like I almost like that doesn't even look like me, which is
Interesting.
interesting to me personally.
So interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess when I think about it, there are times when I look back at a picture or something and it looks a little foreign or yeah, I mean, I say all the time to my husband, I'm like, I feel like I have lived 100 million lifetimes in this lifetime. I've had the privilege of going through a lot of different phases and again, I came here as a chameleon. Like I know like that whatever my like soul DNA is, like I was meant to be a lot of different iterations of myself. Where
Hmm.
there are other people who I think they come here and they are like what you see is what you get. And I'm not judging that. It's nothing, neither one is good or bad, but yeah, it's like you can look back and go, wow, like that was a whole different iteration of who I was. And maybe what you see when you look at that picture is like less than like the physical, but like you don't identify anymore as who that girl was when she was thinking those thoughts and feeling those feelings. So maybe it looks to you like, I don't even like, she's like, looks different than who
I
I am.
don't
I don't
recognize her.
know.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
I
it
just feel
is.
like I see in some of that, like the unloading of the stories and the lightness, and like
Yes.
that's what I see in those
Yes.
photos, is like putting that
Yeah.
stuff down
Mm.
and moving more into this person that moves slower and more unapologetically and is following through on the dream and is finding what feels good. Like that's
Yeah.
more of who I'm moving into now in this current moment. And so I think, yeah, looking at the older pictures, I'm like, that was a woman who was like carrying all this other shit. And now that shit has been put down, and there's
Yeah.
like all this other stuff now that
Yeah.
is different. So I don't know. It's funny. It's interesting looking back.
Really
Pictures
interesting.
are funny.
Yeah. I think they're
Yeah.
amazing. They're like this beautiful like map of where we were and how far we've come. And, in 10 years from now, we're going to look at pictures of ourselves from today and go, I don't recognize that version of
I
me
don't
because
recognize that woman
we're
either. Yeah.
here to evolve. Like
Yeah.
especially us, like we are people who are here to evolve and grow and continue to change and mature and refine and my word in level more and more and more. Um, becoming more and more of yes, who we came here to be, but like I think there's just this element of playfulness that feels new for me. My word of the year is adventure for this year. I chose that word adventure, and I feel like it also connects to like that also, like just identity. Yes, things I'm doing in my life and in the world and through my work, but just having an adventure of like, allowing myself to become whomever it is that I'm going to become and not
Yeah.
having all these external forces telling me like this is okay but this isn't and this would be all right but this isn't. Like I find again this conversation and reflecting in this way is such a gift for me because it's helping me really see the summative of my journey and like all that I am experiencing this year and just the freedom that I've now created for myself in order to explore all these things.
Yeah. I
There's so
love
much
that.
more freedom for me than there ever used to be. I mean, I remember when I first created a business card 5 years ago, it said like your loving guide to freedom, and that to me is also part of my core essence, in the work that I think I'm here to do. The way I'm meant to serve is to help free people from whatever constraints, they're feeling bound by, whatever that might be, whether it's physical or emotional or energetic or mental, to help them feel more free so they can be in this space of adventure and exploration and not feel like it has to be a certain way or that's not for me. That's for someone else, not for me. Because we get so tied up in those identities. We get so
Hmm.
tied up in who we think we're supposed to be. And again, I just call bullshit on all of it. There is no one we're supposed to be here. That's the fun of being part of this crazy old planet is we get to decide day by day who do I want to be? What lights me up? What turns me on? What excites me? And as women, it changes for us too. Like no one ever told me that until someone told me that. For
Hmm.
women, like we are so many flavors. There's so many possibilities for us, and we have the right to change our minds. Maybe we were this for a good portion of our life, and now we get to be something different. I say to my daughter all the time, I think my mom said this to me all the time. you're a girl, you're allowed to change your mind. You're a girl, you're allowed to change your mind. I don't know why it was equated to being the feminine, but I think she was onto something, that permission needed to be given. Like, it's okay. You're allowed to change your mind. It doesn't have to be that you're locked in. And so I say
I
to
love
Emma all the
that.
time, honey, you're allowed to change your mind. Like, she'll come home from school and maybe talk about a kid in her class who maybe she was close to, but all of a sudden, like, she's not really feeling connected to anymore. And like, I could see she feels like torn about that, and I'll
Yeah.
say to her, you're allowed to change your mind. Like, maybe this person was good for you last year, but maybe this friend now is, you're changing and growing, and maybe this friend isn't a match for you anymore. And that's okay. You're allowed to change your mind. You don't have to stay with this friend just because,
Right.
right? Whatever the story is in her mind that's
Right.
making her feel like afraid to admit, like, I don't really like this person anymore. Like, you don't have to feel bad about that. It's okay to change. It's okay.
Yeah. And you might circle back around too. And
And you might
even
circle back,
changing
and
your
that's
mind
okay
now
too.
doesn't mean that's a final decision.
That's
In
right.
a week it might change, or a year,
That's right.
or 3 years,
This
or
is
you
what
might
women
become
need to
really
hear
great
more.
friends, you know?
Women need to know this
Yeah,
more. I'm feeling a channel now. Women need to know
I
they
can
have
tell.
permission to change their course, to change their mind, that it's safe to say, this worked for me up until now, and it no longer does. I'm
Hmm.
granting every woman everywhere permission. It is okay, no matter what stories you have telling you, but I committed to this, but I said I would do this. Like, this is what creates so much resentment amongst us, and that feeling of lostness. When we lose ourselves, it's because we've been saying yes to something that it's been a no, but we've been locked in for some reason. There's some other part of us that has kept us locked in. And to me, there's no bigger tragedy than going through life that way, being locked in to a way of living, whatever that is, your job, your relationship, your where you live in the world, where you didn't give yourself that permission to do it a little differently because someone said, this is how it's supposed to be done. There's
Right.
no bigger tragedy to me than a person coming through this lifetime, being at their end of days, lying in their bed and looking back and going, I knew at this point I should have switched this or changed this and I didn't. And what a sense of regret I feel now. To me, that's the
Yeah.
ultimate tragedy.
Hmm.
I want women in this lifetime now to be able to free themselves so they can step into these other paths that are more aligned for them than, and it's okay. Like, maybe we just didn't know it wasn't our time 10 years ago, but now it does feel like our time. And it's okay to be afraid to change path, but change the fucking path, because if you don't, oh, there's just so much that's going to come. That's not good. It's not good for you. It's just going to be the snowball effect of all the universe showing you over and over, you missed the boat on that path. Now get off this boat and get onto that other boat that you could have gotten on, right? Like, the universe will continue to remind us and show us when we're not aligned. It will
Yeah.
keep happening over and over and over till, God pray, we get the message and we pivot.
Yeah. And
So
gather the
anyway,
courage.
I don't
That's
know where that
okay. I
all
could
came from.
tell. I could tell it was coming. I was going to say, and it might not even be, it's interesting because I don't even know if it's a thing that someone has explicitly said to you. Not to you, but like you as in
Yeah.
general, women in general. Because I think there's this weird societal pressure, right? Like I've noticed this in the last year so much, like how freaking influenced I am by like movies and TV and all of the entertainment industry, and even stuff that I didn't know I was influenced by. Like little things would
Yes.
pop up and I'm like, oh, that's not even something that's not an experience I've had personally that's made me scared or taught me this thing. That is full on from the entertainment industry,
Yeah.
from movies and documentaries and TV shows and all the things. So it might not even be like someone specifically saying to you, you know, don't leave your marriage because you have to stay married because you made a commitment. Maybe someone didn't actually say that to you, but that's just like the
Implied. It's
pressure
implied.
that's implied in society and is
Yeah.
written
Yeah.
on in the movies where every
Eh,
movie ends with the wedding and there's nothing past that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yes. Yes. 1,000,000% yes.
yeah.
We're reading in Cassandra Speaks now in book club about the stories and how old the stories go, right? Like the
Mhm.
stories, the myths, the tales that are passed down, they are so old, these stories. I mean, we're specifically reading about the stories about women that their voices should not be trusted, but it's for like what you're taught, what you're speaking to, it's the culture for
Mhm.
sure. Part of my um, year of radical self-love, which was 2018, was being way more conscious about what I was consuming from the media, from social media, from TV, from movies. Like you can ask my kids and my husband, like, what does mom watch on TV? When is mom doesn't really watch much of anything anymore. And that is very much intentional. Mom watches very select few things. Um, Mom allows very select few things into her inbox. It's something that I had to really become more intentional and conscious about was where these influences were still coming from, because you can feel the shit from your family of origin and your past traumas, but then there's also this current day stuff that's just like we were saying, it's implicit, like you don't even realize how much you're being impacted. Like I can tell you on Facebook, like I have a business, and so I love being on Facebook because I have a business and I have a group on Facebook that's really important to me to serve that community. But if it weren't for my business and my need to be on Facebook for that reason, and again, my business, it's like, no, it's my purpose here, not my business, my purpose, the work I'm meant to do here. I wouldn't be on Facebook because I find it is such a, I don't even have a word for what, if you're not armored up, if you're not conscious, if you let your guard down for just half a second, the kind of psychological damage and energetic damage that you could, you know, expose yourself to on social media. It is, I am a highly sensitive person and an empath. It is not for me. So when I go on Facebook, literally I'm in my group, I post something and I'm off. I
Mhm.
cannot anymore spend any extra minute. Like I don't post much anymore on Facebook. I don't know what's going on in my friends' lives, which is awful because they'll be like, "Didn't you see my thing on Facebook?" And I'm like, "I'm not really on Facebook much. Like I don't spend a lot of time. I'm sorry I didn't know this, but we do have to be really conscious about where those voices are still getting through, that like you said, you didn't even realize where the voices were coming from. And it goes as it's as young as like what you were talking about with like, you know, it's just like the Disney tales. Like it's the Disney movies that the girls we all grew up on.
Yeah.
They're all bullshit. And they feed
Yeah.
us all these false messages about, you know, love and courtship and finding that partner. I mean, it's Jerry Maguire bullshit. You know, you complete me. I mean, we've been drinking the Kool-Aid for a very long
So
time. And the
long.
movies are a wonderful example of a place where if we're not careful, yeah, we're gonna be completely influenced. So ask me what's the one show I watch?
What is the one show you watch?
I
What is the
watch
only thing?
reruns of Little House on the Prairie. Because I grew up on Little House on the Prairie.
I love
I
that.
love Little House on the Prairie. Like, you have no idea how much joy and nourishment it brings me to watch Mom, Pa, Mary,
Oh,
and Laura and Carrie and their story and Laura's journey. It's so ridiculous, but like even my kids now, they're like, "Oh, you watching Little House again, Mom?" I'm like, "Yep." When I watch TV, that's what I choose to watch. I'll watch every now and again a show with Brian, but it's usually something I'm like, "Why am I even watching this?" It's just I don't want this. I don't want this in my brain. I don't want this in my energy. And I'll usually cut it off and be like, I love you, but I can't watch with you anymore. Enjoy. So yeah.
that's so
And
funny.
it
I
is,
might
it's
have to go
everywhere.
watch an episode and see
Have you
if I'm
never
even.
seen it?
I've seen it, but like I was very, very young, and
I'm 10 years older than you. So yeah,
yeah,
you're like a
Like
whole
I
decade
watched
younger.
reruns,
I'm
but
telling
for like
you,
a little period of time, I was not highly invested in Little House on the Prairie, but I know I've seen
it's
some of it.
such a good show. It's so like old-fashioned values, and like it's not hokey in the way that like the shows are about like modern day topics, like the spring dance for the kids and the guy in the town who has the disability and everyone's picking on him and what do we do, and marriage and how hard marriage can be. Like it's such a timeless show. And yeah, it's like a little hokey pop plays his fiddle at night and everyone like smiles. But I freaking love that show. And it's like the only thing I will allow into my home. And
That's
I
funny.
gladly let my kids be around when it's on because I think there's so much to learn from it. So damn it,
Yeah.
that's going to be another iteration of Stacey. It's like bringing more Little House on the Prairie into the world. I think I've taken us off track a little, but
Oh, that's really funny.
you know,
Um,
we have to be careful what we consume.
yes,
Very
I
careful, very
agree. And
conscious of what we
and
consume.
even like I follow a lot of like upbeat like accounts on like my Instagram, and like poetry and like positive things, and astrology is like most of like what is in there, but even all of the positive
Overwhelming.
things, like
Too
that's
much.
even not even overwhelming, but like highly influential when, because I have also a lot of quiet and like alone time for me, that I get to sit with my thoughts. And so I read a post about like the way the planets are aligned right now, and I'm like thinking, like taking that information in and being like, how is this
Yeah.
affecting me? Is this affecting me? Oh, there's this massive opportunity for manifestation right now by the way the planets are aligned. I should be doing more. I should be acting on this. And like I I don't, I'm just say that to say like I think people, it is commonly a common comment that you hear from people that's like, oh, social media is negative, and like all the negative things that are on social media, and like it's,
Yeah.
the
The trolls and all
really
the bad
annoying
stuff. Yeah.
posts and like
Yeah.
politics and all that. Like there's all that negative side, but there's even so much influence in the positive side of things that people are sharing, and even like upbeat and uplifting accounts and all of that. Like there's still
Well,
influencing your
yes.
brain, my
I find
brain.
it's just way too much information for me
Yeah,
personally. I mean, I don't
that's a lot.
understand truly how people can, even if you're following all the most positive, I truly can't allow myself anymore to just scroll for more than like 1 minute. Literally, my brain's like on overdrive after 1 minute. If even if it's all positive stuff, because what it does for me is it takes me away from my knowing and my voice. Every time
Hmm.
I'm hearing someone else's knowing and voice, it's interesting. I'm like, shit, am I like this recluse and I'm not getting out enough into the world? And I think, yeah, part of me really has created a new environment for myself where I don't follow a lot of people, or maybe I do, but I don't show up for I don't watch a lot, I don't listen to a lot, I don't read a lot because it takes me away from what I know. Every now and again, I love that. Um, because it helps me find my voice to hear someone else's voice. Sometimes that's like I need that opposition to find what I
Yeah,
want to say.
little
But in
reminder.
general, we're living in this excessive information age. And not even for highly sensitives, but for any person, we have to be monitoring how much time and energy we're allowing. Again, what are we consuming? How much are we consuming? Because like, great, everyone's putting their stuff out there, but like, what about my stuff? What am I putting out there? If I'm busy all day looking at everyone else's stuff, I'm missing out on my own opportunity to like create my own sense of whatever the thing is that they're doing out there. It's such, I find social media to be very negative because of that, because it's excessive. The information is excessive. Our
Hmm.
brains are not meant to be taking in so much information, whether it's positive or negative. It's simply too much information. Technology is going a billion times faster than our brains were meant to.
Yeah.
And the best thing we can do is give ourselves breaks and permission to stay off for the day, or just going for 5 minutes and then listen to your body when you feel like you're down a rabbit hole, you don't even know who you, like, what? I'm a person? Oh, okay. I've been on this way too long. Let me get off this. I'm back to myself, right? We can lose ourselves very often in the positive too. Um, so I don't know, for me, I know I'm probably in a very small minority. Like, I don't have TikTok. I'm not on Instagram. If you look at my Instagram feed, it's really sad. Like, I probably have like 50 posts total across 5 years because I don't feel like I want to be there. I don't need it. I don't like it. It overwhelms me.
Yeah.
Every now and then, if I want to look at some funny things, like I'll pop on for a couple minutes and then I am off as fast as I got on because it's
Yeah.
just too overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
It's too much information for me.
Well, one of the things that I love and admire so much about you is we were talking about this recently, and your sort of like solidity, that's not even a word, but solid
Solidarity,
nature of
solidness.
solidness. That's a good one. It's probably the correct word. Solid.
Is that even a word? I don't know. I made it up. Solidness.
Now I'm like, what even are words right now? My brain is,
Exactly.
that's how my
Exactly.
brain has been though for a long time. I'm like, what even are words? And I'm like, because I'm so like on this path of actually being really conscious of my words and like words in
Mm,
general, and like finding words that fit better, and really like that's a
yeah.
massive mission right now that
Yeah.
sometimes I obviously like I overthink it, but you are, talked recently about how you're just like rock solid in sort of like who you are, and like not letting this stuff kind of come in. And I just like I love and I admire that about you. And I love like gathering these little pieces throughout this conversation of sort of how that's come to be. But if there's anything you'd like to add about your solidness,
My solidness. Um,
because we
that's a
talked
good
recently about
question.
how sort
Yeah.
of like you're like shit just like doesn't really, like it bounces off of me, and like how you're such like you're this really beautiful and amazing place to actually go. And like I'll say this like personally, and I don't mean this the way it's going to come out, but it probably just sounds bad, but like to like you listen to my shit, and like I could kind of like dump the shit on you, and you're like, it doesn't,
It
I
doesn't
don't
phase
absorb it.
me. Yeah, I don't
It
absorb
goes,
it.
it filters through. Like it's okay if you need that place, because I'm not absorbing it, because you're like, you said that to me basically. Like I'm so sort of solid in who I am and where I'm at and the
Yeah.
work that I've done, that it doesn't bother me to have someone like dump their shit on me, basically. And by the way, this is not permission for everyone to go dump their shit on Stacey all the
Don't come dump
time.
your shit on me, people. Don't you come dump on your shit. I love that. I love that. I so appreciate you saying that and reminding me of that and reflecting that back to me. Leanne, I have to say, I think it's been it is part of the superpower I was meant to grow into. And it's taken a lot of work to get to the place in my life where I can do the work I do with as many women as I do it with. And at the end of my work day, I don't carry it with me. I am fully present for my kids and the second half of my day. That has taken a lot of fucking work.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because I am so solid and have such strong knowing that this is my purpose here, is to be that, to hold that space for my kids, for my partner, and for my sacred contracts. Like, it's who I came here to be. So I had no choice but to get to the point where I would have to do my own healing and learn the tools of how do I manage my energy so exquisitely and so messily, because trust me, it's not a it's messy still, but
Yeah. Not
I've
easy.
gotten to a place where it's like breathing air for me. I know intuitively and on a deep level when I am in a place where I need to boundary up, and then I walk away or I put up that energetic boundary. I've gone from awareness to understanding to deep knowing in myself of what my energy is, what my purpose here is, what is important to me. And I don't anymore allow anything to rock that boat. Nothing can rock that boat anymore, because divine, I mean, it's really spirit. It's spirit who has gifted me with this knowing with a capital K. Like, I know who I am here. I know what I'm meant to do here, at least for now.
Mm-hmm.
And once you know, I think it just gets easier to say no to the things that are draining on your time and your energy and your wallet and your all the things, your pleasure, your joy. It just gets easier and easier because, at least for me, and this is another part of it too, I've seen the rewards of living this kind of life, not just for myself, but the people that I support in my life, including my family. And I would have it no other way
Mm-hmm.
to see how me being personally and energetically responsible for myself in such a masterful way, that the rewards of that are so, there's no words, right? Like, what are words? There's no words to describe how
What
good
are words?
it feels to show up fully in my gifts for other people. It feeds me just as much as it feeds the people in my life. So, and you just get to that point where it's like you just become the priority, and you know what works for you and doesn't after a while. And then it gets easier to say no. It doesn't ever get easy, but it gets much easier. So I don't know. I think that solidness is also a result of all the healing that I've gone through, all of the energetic healing and the clearing and the um, working with a lot of my younger children. I mean, I'm actively still working with a lot of my younger parts. In fact, this little bottle right here, this old fashioned crazy little perfume bottle with the sprayer, like I spray it into my mouth. It's just air. This is something I do every day for my younger self. I have rituals, and I'm holistically always working with my younger selves, who are, I know, never going to be 100% in a place where they're not going to sabotage me every now and again with their fears or their worries or their, so it's become a part of my life, just of my daily rituals. My daily life is working with myself, with my healing process that will never end. It's the work of a lifetime. And it just gets easier each day, but I never stop. I never will not be committed to myself and my healing first, continuing to heal all the parts of myself that took on too much, took on messages that I never actually believed in, that have had trauma, that weren't allowed to use their voice, that felt unseen, right? That's the work of my lifetime. So the more I continue to support myself, I feel the more solidly I get to show up every day. And it feels too good to be on this side of things where I don't think I could ever compromise. And I don't think it ever could really go back anymore. Like, once you're there, you're kind of there. And it's just a continued journey of self-care, self-love, right? Permission, giving yourself permission, and riding the waves and being okay with riding the waves. And sometimes those waves can be rough, but I have enough tools now and enough wisdom now and enough self-leadership now that the waves can hit me really hard, and it doesn't take me long to bounce back. It doesn't mean I
Yeah.
don't fall into the deep abyss. I do, but I have, thank God, I've gotten so many wonderful tools in my pocket now that I don't stay down for very long.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that.
yeah, so I guess that lends itself to a sense of like solidness. Maybe that's what you're feeling, when you feel that, when you witness me in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like that is a perfect summary of this whole journey we just went on for this conversation, actually. So I'm gonna cut us off because otherwise I know that like my brain already wants to have like 27 other conversations with you, which is not good for a podcast I'm attempting to keep to like an hour. It's already been
I love it.
well over an hour or over an hour. So thank you, because I'm gonna force us to stop.
Yes,
No, I don't want to.
of course. It feels very full circle.
Thank you for
Very complete.
coming and sharing your heart and your wisdom. I mean, all the tangents I want to go on are like just highlighting and picking out all of the beautiful pieces of wisdom that I've learned from you and I've seen from you. But I'm gonna have to just make people go join your group and be a part of your world, because everybody needs to be a part of Stacey's world, and especially if you're in my world, you need to be a part of Stacey's world, because I feel like we're very well aligned. Our people are similar. So if you love me, you will probably love Stacey, almost guaranteed. So say that.
And that's okay if you don't. No, I'm not
It's
for
okay if
everybody.
you don't.
That's
I
okay.
know.
But yeah,
But
we have
same.
a lot of sameness. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share and holding space for this. This was a gift for me, really. I haven't been on someone else's podcast in a long time. And so like it's just fun not having an agenda and just talking through like whatever wanted to come through today. So thank you for holding this space. And I hope that your listeners got a little couple of nuggets out of this or some resonance, you know, whatever.
I'm sure.
I'm hoping something came through.
Yeah, I think this was really good. I love this. It's funny, I was in a conversation yesterday and they were like, I didn't know you had a podcast. What's your podcast even about? I'm like, it's just whatever wants to come up in the conversation. And that's the podcast, and that's what it is. And it's always
so
different and
authentic. Yeah.
That's what I love about it, is I don't ever actually know where any of these conversations are going to go, but this was really beautiful. So thank you for spending your time with me.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. And thank you to listeners for spending your time with us. And we'll be back for another episode next week.